the adage, you don't judge a book by its cover, but that was not pertaining to books.
Right. It really is just a metaphor, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think because people will associate the face of your work and the quality of it by how that first impression.
Hey, it's Writers Row, where we talk about the writing community on Twitter. We talk about the business side and the creative side of writing. I am one of your hosts, DC Wright-Hammer. I'm the author of the Between Two Minds series, which are sci-fi thrillers available on Amazon.com and Wright-Hammer.com. And I'm joined, as always,
with David Gane. I'm the co-writer of the Shepherd and Wolf mystery series, which is about two teenage boys who chase serial killers. And you can get those on Amazon, if you're in Canada, chapters, as well as my own website, kunyosinggane.com. And we have someone else on the show.
Special guest.
Hi.
And who are you?
How
did you get on here?
What is going on? We're being invaded.
My name is Katie Hagaman, and I'm the author of the Awakening series, and I have a couple children's book as well, but I'm also an illustrator and a graphic designer.
Oh.
That sounds like we might have a show topic. But, DC, should we remind people that if you like what you're watching, you can subscribe, comment down below, hit the like button. Did I get everything, DC? Did I do it right?
Hit the little bell for notifications.
Oh, yes, the little bell.
Yeah, that's something we got to start talking about. People who are already subscribed, ding that bell, because then you'll get notified when new episodes drop. And this episode's going to drop, but we have a bunch of cool ones coming up regardless of when it drops. So hit that notification bell as well.
See? We did it as a group today, DC. Yeah. Isn't that awesome?
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Pressed.
So what are we talking about? I like every one of you just went for your drinks, and I'm like, let's just at least get out what the show topic is today.
No, because people have not read the title and they didn't see my tweet, so they have no idea what this episode is about.
I'm in blind.
We wanted to talk about basically, book covers, but graphic design in general. I think we're writers and we're masters of the word craft. But if we want to become published authors, almost always that involves getting at least a book cover created. And as you go along doing marketing, and even if you're creating like swag of any kind and whatnot, you're eventually going to have to cross that graphic design bridge. And we wanted to bring Katie on because she is both. She's not simply... Well, her cat is there too, because very skilled cat in graphic design.
This is Luna.
Hi, Luna.
It's going to be one of these kind of shows, is it? Awesome.
My cat is going to make an appearance. She often does. When she gets very passionate, that is. Mm-hmm. Yes. But no, we wanted to talk about graphic design because I think it's not most indie authors' forte, and yet we have an independent author in Katie who does both. And I think that's really interesting and cool. And I think I wanted to open the show getting a little bit of Katie's background to kind of figure out where she's coming from, she can talk a little bit about your indie author background as well as how did graphic design kind of fit into that. And then I'm sure David will come up with some great questions to drive the discussion from there. So.
Okay. Well, I started writing. We were talking about this a little bit earlier with online role playing, and just probably did that for over a decade. Just really enjoyed writing back and forth and like just the banter of authors and kind of because writing at any level is unique and I think needs to be encouraged and lifted up. But there was eventually I hit the point where I looked at like how much I had written through that and realized that I had like 10 books. So I was like, maybe I should actually focus on writing a book because I enjoy it so much. And then I just kind of one thing led to another, and it's weird how it happens on. What is happening? Oh,
I don't know.
Claire. But there was I got involved on Twitter, and I somehow stumbled upon the writing community, and made friends with all these authors. And actually, that's how I met Sean, and I read his book, Fur Lodge, the Restarter series. And when I realized that he was an independent author, plug, that's my best friend's book.
So, Sean McMahon, by the way,
Sean
so you all know who Sean is.
Sean McMahon. Don't call me McMahon. Sorry.
What?
But and I read his book, and when I realized that he had done that all himself, and that he had gone the independent route, I was like, okay, I really can do this. So I buckled down and I wrote my book and published it through Amazon and Kindle Direct and all that stuff.
And were you planning on doing your own? So you did do your own cover, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You were planning on that the whole time? Yep, there you go. Super cool. Those scrolls? Is that what those are?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, super cool. You were planning on doing your own cover the entire time? You just
Yeah, it didn't even really occur to me, because back to the whole role-playing background, there's characters have like logos, or what they call signatures, and it's just like a representation of your character and stuff. So I started making my own there and messing with the computer some, and then I made them for other people, and then it turned into just more graphic design stuff. And so to do this, it didn't even occur. It was just like making a bigger role play signature. It's, just book cover size and dimensions. So I looked around for, stock images that fit what I was wanting, and was really lucky to stumble upon the perfect one, and then font hunted and just kind of put it together.
Wow. And if I'm not mistaken, you do this also for other people's work as well, correct?
Yes.
Now?
There's somebody named Patrick Johnson. Have you guys heard of Patrick Johnson?
Patrick Johnson?
Oh,
yeah, Patrick
wait.
Johnson.
No.
You don't know Patrick Johnson?
Anyways.
Maybe if you said the name, it'll help you.
Just Patrick Johnson. Patrick Johnson. Patrick Johnson.
Yeah, I did.
Pat Johnson. Okay, I think I might have.
That's what I helped out with his the Custodian series. I did all 4 of his covers. Paul Blake, a few hours after this, I did his cover, and a few others that I'm just blanking on right now. But I've got a couple in the works, and yeah. So.
What software do you use to make them?
Photoshop.
So you use Photoshop, and you know the dimensions of the book, and you just kind of work backwards from there.
Mm-hmm. And what's really cool is KDP specifically offers templates where you can put in what dimensions your books are and the page count, so you'll know spine width. And I can use that for publishing or creating a cover for any book. It doesn't have to just be through KDP. It's still just the template that I need. And then, I start from there. That's just my background that I keep in check, and I can mess with the transparency of the images to make sure that things are aligned where they need to be, and then it's the spines, centered how I want it to be, and different things like that.
And did it come easily for you, or was there a couple of misses on the first couple?
I only started using Photoshop within probably the past year. Before that, I was using probably 3 different online free programs. And then when I realized that it was something I really wanted to do, I broke and got Photoshop. So there was a little bit of a learning curve, but YouTube makes anything possible. And for questions I had, I just Googled tutorials, YouTube tutorials. But having the background and the other imaging software that I had used in graphic design, a lot of it, flowed over pretty easily. So.
And you mentioned stock photos. Where are you getting your stock photos from?
There is there's a lot of really wonderful sites. The one that I use mostly is called Unsplash.
Yeah, love it.
I use that one a lot.
Unsplash.com, free, and you can do manipulation on it, and
it's free for personal and commercial use.
Okay. And you don't have to do the, what is it? Tributes, not tributes. What are they called where you have to credit?
Attribution?
Attribution, yeah.
You can, but it's not required.
Okay.
I actually reached out to the photographer who had taken this photo for my cover of my book called The Awakening, and I never heard back from him. But I was like, dude, your picture's on a book cover, but.
So what would you say? So there's a lot of questions I have, but I think how important is a good book cover? Let's just kind of put it out there like that.
It is so important. Because we all like, the adage, you don't judge a book by its cover, but that was not pertaining to books.
Right. It really is just a metaphor, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think because people will associate the face of your work and the quality of it by how that first impression, and if it looks like a bunch of like clip art images, you're going to think that the effort inside probably isn't, up your alley, or the quality you're wanting to spend your time investing in and reading.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say it's unfortunate because when even though the work may be fantastic on the inside, really it's the adage is what is out there, but doesn't mean anyone listens to it, right? Because the writing may be fantastic, but that when it's on a bookshelf or on the listing, that's our first impression of anyone's writing or anyone's book. So
we were talking about covers a little while ago, and you held up Sparks' book, and my first reaction was like, oh, what's that about? Because the cover had a hook, and I was like, that looks fascinating. That's interesting to me.
Okay, I want you to talk about that, actually. What do you mean by a hook?
It makes people want to figure out what's happening inside. Like the Between Two Minds, that's a really clever one, because you see that, and I'm just going to keep plugging people. So when you see that, you get sort of an idea of the theme of the book. Well, like a genre, or it's almost like a foreshadowing of what's going to be inside, and you can tell if that's something you're going to be interested in or not. And so for me, when I saw Sparks' cover, it looked kind of like sci-fi, technologically, like there were some mysterious elements in there, and that was alluring to me. So I was like, oh, hey, what is that about? Versus if she had just had, a little like microchip and a title, there's meaning in images.
Yep. So so someone's written their book and they know they need to have a cover made. Let's say they did want to do it themselves. What do you think some steps are? We all have different computer capabilities. We all have different eyes for media and the way book covers look. What are some tips you could give, especially independent authors who are needing book covers? What are some directions they should take, some tips they should consider?
Definitely check like portfolios with maybe if you find a graphic designer or a book cover designer that you might be interested in, maybe speak with other authors that have used them before, to make sure that they were easy to work with, that they listened to what you wanted, and that they were punctual and delivered what you needed, because timeline is important in the creative process. And there have been countless, well, not countless, maybe like 5 messages that I've gotten on, that have said, my cover designer fell through, or this is, I thought I was going to have this 2 weeks ago. I have this timeline I need to push through. Can you help? And it's like, you just want to make sure that you're with somebody that will keep your pace. and to just really shop around, because, one thing that makes getting a quality cover so hard is they're expensive. And, when you're an independent author and you're doing this on your own, you can't, flush out $500 for a cover, and that's one reason when I do covers, I keep the indie community in mind and try to keep it as minimal as I can, expense wise, but you just got to fish around. And also a good thing about fishing around too is there are different cover designers who are better at different genres. Like one might specialize in romance covers, one might do really great with sci-fi covers, one might be a jack of all trades. You just kind of gotta piece it out. And I think too, it depends on what you're looking for, because if you have an idea of something and you present it and it's extremely specific, that's okay, because that's your book and that's how you want it. But you might need a visual artist who can render you an image, and then the cover designer can put it into the cover format with the title and polish it up and do the back blurb and spine stuff. You look like you have a question, DC.
Well, since you brought up my book and the cover, I like telling the story because I think it's a good, and I want to make sure it's not too shiny. But the whole concept behind my book is it's between two minds. But so I told the designer, I said, I want two heads facing out, two male heads facing out, and I want a digital brain in the middle, and I want some kind of cityscape. That was basically all I told the designer. And he came back with something very similar to this. And what was neat about it is, like, this is above and beyond anything I could have imagined. I was like, oh my gosh, like, it was super real. My wife and I had this little like party, even just at the first draft, and it went through some changes. And the digital brain is actually like a Venn diagram. That was the whole concept behind it, like, where the two minds meet. And so I think I had a very specific idea in mind. A good designer can take a specific idea and make it even better, is what I found, if you're working with a good designer. And in fact, the designer I worked with actually worked heavily with my editor to know story elements. Yeah. I worked with a company that did the kind of from start to finish indie publishing, and I spent a little more money to get the high quality stock photos and to have that level of detail. But that's not, you don't necessarily have to go that route. Right. I think you want quality, but I think what you said earlier, Katie, is important. You also want value for your money. And so, we talked a little bit, I just talked about working with a designer, and you talked about working with a designer, but if an indie author wanted to make their own cover,
yes,
what are some things that they could do to do that, to save money and to get experience doing it?
Well, you would definitely need software to edit PDFs.
Okay.
So that you could stack your images, and you can also have just a higher quality image. So you might want to think about something like Photoshop, which can be an expense in itself. But if you're going to have a series, or if you're going to, keep rolling with it, it would be worth the expense. And just play with it. Like I said, there's templates, so you can put that there and just layer some images on it, just play with it. Just play with it, because that's how I started doing it. It's not like I've had any formal training, I had an interest in it and I wanted to do it, so I did it. You just, get yourself familiar with it and work it out. And what's really awesome about our writing community is that there are so many talented people out there who can do graphic stuff, that if you had a question, just ask and pop, you'll have an answer, and it can help you through the process. When I was doing my children's books, because I did all the illustrations that were inside, and one of my biggest struggles, one of my biggest struggles was how to take a quality image of my picture because it wasn't a digital image. It was tactile. It was, so I had to get a good quality photo of it and then, put it in here. So there was a friend on Twitter who told me how to make a DIY light box, which is like, yeah. So I pretty much just took a cardboard box, hollowed out the sides, put like a dollar store party cloth over it, hung some lamps on the outside, and it made a soft light. And then you just take like a million shots and one of them works and then, load it in. But I mean, I would have had no idea that that's what I needed to do to get a decent photo. So, I mean, there are a lot of resources out there, and just don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to use them because everybody's got the questions, or somebody has had those questions answered for them before. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm like, I want to let DC ask his question.
Well, I have more.
You ask your questions then.
Well, actually, I have more of a statement. So I think everything you said is right, Katie. One of the things I do want to mention, if you are approaching people, on the one hand, as indie authors, we don't want to pay too much for services. On the other hand, designers and people in the writing community do need to be paid for their services. So just one of the things I want to emphasize right now is, yes, definitely take advantage of all the free stuff you can. But if somebody does ask for payment for services, as long as they're not, it doesn't seem shady or anything like that, you should consider payment for services because we all work hard for the things we do and we deserve to make money for our labor. That's what we should always think of. You should definitely take advantage of free services. You should not take advantage of people, I guess is the way I would put it.
Can I, and don't try and sell to them that they're getting exposure by being on the cover of a book, because that means nothing to them.
Right.
That's the worst. You can't pay the bills with that.
Right. Go buy groceries with exposure. My exposure credit card.
Look at me. I'm on the cover. My work is on the cover of this book.
Bring it to the store.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that kind of I'm not sure how to approach this question, but what if your design skills suck?
Uh-huh.
How do you have any advice for finding out if your design skills suck, and how to tell your friend that their design skills suck?
If you can't tell if it's bad, like if you look at it and you go, is this right? It's probably not the quality that you would want. And like I said before, Twitter is a really good source, but people are extremely honest. And, but then that's something very personal too, is your book cover when you're working on it. And you don't want to necessarily throw out like, hey, this could be my cover. What do you think? You can, if you have a few trusted confidants that you want to like share it with and say, like, I need your raw opinion. Like, is this going to fly or not? Or how do you think I could improve it? And, to be on the other end of that, which I have been a couple times, it is hard because you don't want to offend somebody and say like, I know you put like 10 hours into that.
Right.
But I'm not sure it's what your book deserves. Like it is hard working that out, but all you can do is just speak as kindly, but honestly as you can and just say, I totally like your vision. I see where you're going with this. I think it's cool. But maybe, if you had some outside graphic assistants or, something like that. I don't know. That's a hard question.
Well, I'm not going to let you next because it's like drafting, right? It's like you would, I've said on this show before, have another set of eyes on your work. That doesn't mean break the bank to get the best editor that's out there. It just means have another set of eyes on your work before you publish. And I think that's true if you are also putting your own cover together. You should have beta viewers to take a look at your work. And I would even say you do put a lot of time and effort, 10 hours, whatever it is. Instead of just sliding up into someone's DM and saying, here's my book cover, what do you think? You should take it very seriously like you would a beta read. And you should have someone commit and say, hey, I'd like to send you my book cover. Do you think you could take some time out and give it
an honest feedback?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you slide into DMs and you're just most of the time, and this is more personal than anything, I'm looking just for someone to say, yeah, that looks good, cool. If you really want to get someone's feedback, take it as seriously at, set the tone and say, hey, can you take an hour or so to look this over and give me some feedback? And you're going to get much better results from that than if you just haphazard.
Hey, what do you think? Yeah.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So that I just wanted to kind of put it that way because, you're as an independent author, we're responsible for so much, and if you get impatient, if you're throwing together a cover, if you're just putting it in front of people to get, yays or nays, it's going to make the process more frustrating, just like it would if you were drafting and beta, having beta readers and whatnot. Take it seriously and be open to criticism, because the better your book cover is, the more likely they're going to get that good story on the inside.
And that goes with like any part of any creative process, whether it's the writing part or the art or the visual aspect of it. It doesn't, like, you got to be able to take critiques, and not take offense to that, but, take what you can from it and improve what you're doing, and know that people who are critiquing you aren't saying it to be cruel if they're your friends and good people, but because they really want you to succeed, so all good points.
And then the other thing that I kind of have learned working with our publisher is having somebody who has a bit of experience designing book covers actually offers the experience and the knowledge and the wisdom from lots of failed mistakes and practice and stuff like that, to know how to make a thing look better than other things. Yeah. Because even like our publisher will do the covers for ours, and she puts a lot of effort in just where the placement of the letters are on the page in relationship to the image, and making sure that all fits together, and the spacing and the kerning and all that kind of stuff, right? There's a lot of time and effort put into that. Yeah. That's like, really,
even with this font face, like picking it out, it took me forever. And then not only did it take me a while to pick out the font that I wanted, I used like a manipulation to make it, a certain size here and kind of shrink down and then bulge back out. The same with the top and the letters, how they overlap with the K going between the T and the H.
Yeah.
And then, the same thing for this book too, like just the manipulation and styling and stuff like that. It's neat details that aren't just like typing in, The Awakening. It's like, well, how can I make this look even cooler? How can I give it that extra, put in that extra step?
Step. And then I know you were going to say something, DC, but this is on your bingo card. That is David interrupts DC. The other thing that we had on our first two book covers, they came fairly easy for us, but our third one took us a long time. We went down, I think, 2 stock images that did not work out. At least one I know, but I feel like it was 2. It was a long process. We wasted a lot of time trying to get that. We also wasted a lot of time trying to find the coloring for our covers, because if you haven't noticed, we have different colors on our spines and everything like that. And we were never ever happy with it. And the one thing that now has become our rule of thumb is if we're not 90% happy with it, it's a no.
Do not settle. Yeah.
Don't settle, and don't try and force it. And just take the time and the patience to get it right.
Yeah.
And one thing, other thing I should mention is start thinking about your cover right as you're writing it. Because then that can give you a lot more time to put the pieces together.
And you know what I love too is when people have an idea, and even if it's just stick figures, if they just sketch it out. and they're like, I think this would be cool. Like, and then you're like, okay, I can work with this, I can see where that's going. And like you get a sense of even just a vague sense of placement that they want. Like, because some people are very specific, and, they want a street this a certain way and a person in a certain position, or, it has to be like a vapor coming off this way, or like, and that's great. But then sometimes people are just like, well, it's about this girl and she's a dog. And then you're kind of like, okay, but then as the designer, you struggle to pinpoint the feeling and the mood. And, well, is it, in a dark and stormy night, or is she in a park? Or, so think about the scene you want to set and what you want portrayed on your book, other than just, what your book is about. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah. Well, and I think, it depends. I think every author's a little different, and they're going to want something a little different. If you can't figure out what it is you want for a cover, if you should really set aside time to think about it, like Katie said, and maybe sketch some things out. But definitely spend time on the internet looking at the bestsellers today, looking at historical in your genre that have been successful, and start to try to pick up on some trends. Do they always have people facing away from the cover? Do they always have sunsets? Do they always have clouds or something like that? And be very particular. What kind of font? Where's the author's name at? Where is the name of the book? How big in contrast is the author's name versus so a lot of detail on font. Take notes. Like, as you start to see trends, just start writing down a little bit of notes, and set aside that extra little bit of time to put this thought, like David said, take a little bit of extra time to really consider it, because it's true, actually. You definitely want your book to stand out to begin with. You can always go back and do a new cover if you're an independent author, and even traditionally published, as they do editions and new, they re-release. They want to try to attract a new crowd by putting a different cover on things. So it's not like you are completely helpless if you have a bad cover to begin, but you do want to save yourself the heartache of putting your hard work out there, and having it, people look at it like, what is this? And it doesn't get the response you want because you didn't take the time to begin with to get a good cover.
Yeah. Big dead silence. Well, I think that's the end of the show now. So come along.
I have more questions.
I was waiting. I didn't know if somebody's going to ask a question or say something, so I was giving you time.
What's your question?
So we've talked a lot about book covers, but there's also social media art, or social media media, swag, and all the other things. And I think, I'm sure you've designed some of those things as well, right? Can you talk a little bit about doing some of those things?
Yeah, I do website design, logo design, and promos, ads, and different things like that. So, it's all an important aspect of it.
And go ahead, David.
One thing I wanted to mention, what we learned a little bit of the hard way, is when you're getting some of your cover art, making sure that you can retain the rights to it for some of that kind of stuff, as well as even for us, we were playing with the idea of doing posters, but we can only do posters for our first book and our fourth book, because the other two, we purchase stock photos. The rights don't stretch to us selling it as posters. So keeping those things in mind when you start thinking about the swag and all that kind of stuff is something important right off the start. So, okay, DC, you go on with your question now.
Well, and I was just going to go because, and Katie, now that you've mentioned you do some of those things, I'm probably going to hit you up pretty soon. I need some help. And I'm actually relatively graphically inclined, but some of this stuff, it's overwhelming. Like we want to be able to focus on the other things. And so if you can outsource and, pay a fair price for some of these services, it's something to consider as well. You should still take the time and you should take it seriously. Because ultimately, whatever it ends up being, whether it's a book cover or swag or whatnot, it's yours to sell. It's your product. It's your brand. But no, I think we did an episode on all the things that indie authors have to do that aren't writing, and like it gives you a little bit of an anxiety attack as you're listening to it. But this kind of stuff is right up that alley. Like I spent like probably 45 minutes to an hour on Vistaprint trying to build a bookmark, and I couldn't get it quite right. And so my template's just kind of sitting out there annoying me that this bookmark is not going to work. And so these are the things that annoy us if we can't do it ourselves and we don't necessarily feel like paying for it. Something's got to give eventually. And so if you're doing these things, don't be afraid to, like Katie said earlier, get the advice. Or if you can't afford it or piecemeal, save some money, don't go to Starbucks for a week or whatever it is, then actually start to pay for some services. So
you also don't need to just rhy on Photoshop. Like if you have a Mac, there's Pixelmator and Luminar or whatever it is that can also do some of it. Because like for us, I don't use any of the Adobe products really, but when we're doing our little business cards, right, I had to do some adjustments to it. So I basically asked for all the elements, put them into Pixelmator, and readjusted the way that they fit onto these as opposed to this, right? They look pretty well exactly like the covers, but they've been moved around. So yeah, just kind of playing with those little bit of things for your swag. As long as you can get a hold of the elements from, if you have a designer or something, if you didn't do it directly, those things are, and then show it to your designer. If you're just like, hey, can you give me some feedback? They'll most likely be pretty good about it.
And whenever I do any sort of image, whether it's a book cover or a logo, I send multiple versions. Like it won't just be like a JPEG flat compressed image. I'll also do the layered PDF so that if people have that and they want to pick apart the elements or they want to manipulate it for something else, they've paid for it as far as I'm concerned. This is theirs. Like, yeah, it's my work, but I'm not going to like keep it a secret how I did it. If you want it and you can use it, it's yours, and that's
very cool. Want to call it now, David?
Sure, DC.
You got any other pressing questions?
No, I'm very good. Thank you. Thank you,
sure.
Katie.
Thank you, Katie. Let's go into, because we haven't done enough promotions on this episode. Let's get a few more squeezed in at the end here. So, Katie, you get dibs.
Okay, these are my books. Okay, so I have, Haven't You Heard? It's a children's book. And in this book, you will find another children's book. And these are varying topics. This one's about the different ways we can see God and the way he expresses his love for us and through his creation, and just kind of challenges you to open your eyes a different way. And then this one is all about kind of kicking off kids' literary journey. Like it kind of dabbles in a bunch of different genres, and then at the end it has one of my favorite things, and it leaves some blank pages so that kids can start their own book at the end, whether it's a picture book or word book or both. And then I have my young adult series, The Awakening. Book 1 and 2 are out, The Awakening and The Darkling. And I'm hoping that the third one will be out in December. And these are my babies. You can find them on Amazon. You can find them on my website, which I will give you the link to, because I also have a graphic design portion of it. And you can check out pricing and samples and things there. And if you want to contact me, even with just questions, and and also one more thing, when you're looking for a graphic designer, it's really cool when somebody is familiar with and comfortable with their limits. Like there have been times when I've said, like, I think you might need this person. Like, you know what I mean? So just that goes back to the whole fishing around thing for different people. But anyway, I really don't know why I started talking about that. Go on.
Don't go only with Katie, go with everyone else.
Yes.
Well, I know. I just meant, like, you know, you need to find just somebody who works well for you and your vision.
Like an editor, you need the proper editor.
Right.
Same.
Yes, because they know your feel
right
and your intent.
Right. People who specialize in provocative, you know, covers. You should work with a provocative cover designer, somebody who is skilled in that area. So, no, we get it, Katie. We get what you're saying.
Okay.
Awesome.
What do you got, David?
I'm gonna keep on hawking my third book because it's still up for nominations, or it's still a finalist for awards, I think, when this thing goes to air. So middle of October we'll find out. Even if we don't, we're up against some fantastic competition, and I'm really enjoying reading everyone else's writing that are in our category. So, and that's, I should probably say, High Plains Book Awards, young adult category, which is states and provinces of the Plains, and Canadian Children's Book Center Award. We are up for the John Spray Mystery Award, which is like a big award gala in Canada for children's books. So you're big and fancy on that one.
I was going to say, you're fancy.
Super fancy. Going to add to those medals back there and awards. So.
I like Katie, the wall.
Right. The wall that has nothing on it.
There's more space to fill up one day. That's all.
You're
That's
just.
all.
We'll send some of these out.
I'm just gonna also obviously push Katie's services, so reach out to her if you're looking for a book cover. But I've also read this book. This was goes in and out of the rotation at home. We read 2 to 3 books every night to my children. Right now my wife is putting the kids to bed, as she always does when I record, so they don't get to read this tonight. But no, it's very good, and I've been reading to my kids since they were like 6 months old, just, you know, holding them and reading, and they're very good readers now, and they love that their daddy's a writer. And so the fact that you put in a little portion where they can write, we're definitely encouraging that. So we pick up this book, pick this one up for your kids. If you got little ones, it's good for all ages. So make sure to do that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Bye.
For having me.
Bye. Of course.